psychologist in a column entitled All in the Family. Among the awards and recognition she received are the following: the Outstanding Women in Nations Service Award and the Outstanding Young Filipinos, Metrobank Outstanding Teacher Award, DOST's Great Men and Women of Science Award, National Book Award, Carlos Palanca Award, Catholic Mass Media Award, and she is the first in academe to receive the Third World Academy of Sciences Regional Prize for Public Understanding of Science for the East Asia, the Southeast Asia, and the Pacific region. Dear brothers and sisters, let us welcome, listen, and learn from Dr. Queena A. Lee Chua, Ph.D.
Hello, everybody. Do I proceed now?
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you for Sister Gertrude. I was actually looking at the chat, and the easiest thing probably might be to do live, but thank you, Sister Gertrude, for that very nice introduction. I will now share screen, and okay. Yeah. Hopefully this should come out. Okay, so I hope everybody can see the screen.
Yes, it's clear.
Salamat. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I would like to say a special mention to Miss Rosalinda Basas, an educator whom I hold in high esteem. And normally, and she's actually the reason why I also said yes to addressing you in this convention. I met Miss Basas decades ago when she was in Poveda, and I was very in awe of, I think, her authenticity and her openness in discussing what we both feel would be what parents, students, and teachers, need the most. A lot of what I learned from Ms. Basas in the short time that I've interacted with her, some of them will also come out today. But of course, this is an updated one. We will touch on the pandemic, but we will also touch on underlying issues that have already been problems in the Philippines, at least in the arena of learning even before the pandemic. Okay, so first, these are the obvious problems that are worsened by the pandemic. You just had Professor Shelito this morning. I'm very sure he talked about this one. For education, obviously, lack of access to gadgets and digital infrastructure would be one of the top concerns. Lack of space for many of my scholars. I teach in the Ateneo, and yes, thankfully, I would say majority of the students are blessed with maybe the resources to do well, but I also hold a special place in my heart, especially for many of our scholars in the sciences. And some of them, yes, they have lack of space to learn properly at home. Job losses in the family, health concerns in the family, and hastily implemented educational reforms. I will just have to say that K-12 was done with the best of intentions, but I am on record in saying this, and I've said this even to the people who are implementing it, that they were hastily implemented, and even before the pandemic, we are seeing some of the negative effects in the students who were subjected to it. However, the pandemic impacts the vulnerable the most and highlights societal inequality, including inequities in education. And that is what breaks my heart. I am fortunate to actually spend most of my career. Even right now in the pandemic, I've given more than 100 webinars to schools, parent groups, government, media, parishes, civil groups. Majority of the schools actually they're impacted, of course. Attendance has gone down, tuition has gone down, but many of the parents actually, because of prudence or just plain luck or hard work, they actually manage. The one that really made me feel, made me really feel and pray to God that can He please help us, give us the wisdom, the cooperation, the unity to stop this pandemic, would be when I've had the privilege of speaking not over Zoom because they cannot afford it. Zoom actually eats up a lot of bandwidth, but sometimes even just through Facebook. I've done several webinars pa rin siya, pero minsan wala nang on-cam to many of the public schools. And yes, they have tons of problems, but many of them are also doing the best that we can. And today I would just like to share with you some of the stuff that has inspired me in this pandemic. The following slides are courtesy of Father Ben Nebres. He is a mathematician, my mentor, and the longest serving Ateneo president for 19 years. He's very, very active in several non-government organizations, especially those that alleviate poverty and help out in education. So one of the centers we are most proud of is the Ateneo Center for Educational Development, or ACE. So this is one of the posters, recent posters that they have. ACE continues to support in education many of the most vulnerable. So not only are they faceless, for Father Ben and the group in ACE, they actually know the people involved. So for instance, I would like to talk about the two young ladies highlighted here. So the one here on the right is Jeneline Padios. So we call her Batang Ina, okay? And she was in the streets for a while, but right now she's working in a food outlet and she's taking delivery orders. And I'm so happy to tell you, she's actually now in grade 12. I was talking to Father Ben yesterday. I said, Father, paano niya nagagawa? Through the help of ACE, through the grace of God, through the support of her family. She's actually studying. And she's been with the ACE program for 3 years. Just in case you feel it in your heart, you would like to do this, you can donate to the Ateneo BPI account 3081000629. Send a transaction slip to Viber 0918-917-1339. Email Carmela Oracion, former Ateneo High School principal, at ateneo.edu. According to ACE, 90 pesos is actually already sufficient for one family for 1 week. Can you imagine that? I could not imagine how they can do it. 90 pesos. Sabi ko, grabe, inspiring. Okay. 360 for one family for 1 month, or 3,600 for one family for 10 months. So your donations would enable ACE to send them vegetables, because we feel that for the growing brain, because we're talking of education, for the growing brain, you need good quality food. So gulay ang ibibigay sa kanila. Okay? And let me tell you about this young lady here. Her name is Jennifer. Okay, so they're not related. This one is Jeneline is of course a lot older. Jennifer is younger. So this is Jennifer. Jennifer Agustin's family, they live in a shack around Santa Mesa, and they're always in danger of being evicted. And according to Father Ben, her teachers say she really wants to study, and she studies very hard. She sells sampaguita to help her family. You know, when I look at this photo on the left, and how she's still, of course, a street child, is trying her best to have an education, I tell my students, nako, yung mga complaint niyo na wala kayong ganito, na wala kayong ganito. I said, I'm not, I keep on telling my students, guys, just please count your blessings. I said, look at the other people who really, really want to study, who don't want to cheat, they just want to study. So this photo tugs at my heart, and I keep her in mind sometimes when I'm very exhausted, when I'm dealing with students who have more privileges and possibly who are less gritty, less resilient than Jennifer. This is Jennifer again. She studies wherever she can find a place. And here, just on the ground. Wala siyang mesa. Basically, ito na yung mesa niya. Her family is one of those that ACE provides veggie packs for weekly. Ayan. So if Jennifer can do it, I feel anyone can do it. Ganun na. Aside from Jennifer and Jeneline, what ACE also does, and this one, wow, this one is a place with no Wi-Fi at all. So ACE works very closely with Gawad Kalinga in Gabaldon at the foothills of the Sierra Madre in Nueva Ecija. So because they have no Wi-Fi, but they really want to learn, they do two-way radios. Walang Facebook sila. No Wi-Fi talaga. Okay, there's none. There's no infrastructure. But the kids really want to learn. And look at this. I actually looked at the videos, and at one point last April, when Father Ben sent me the videos, I actually cried. You know, it was just so inspiring. These are the teachers, two-way radios, and these are the kids. So I actually sat in on their math classes. I sat in on their science classes, on their language classes. Somehow nakakayanan nila. Ang hirap. Ang hirap-hirap. Because, you know, the teacher would talk to a child and say, okay, what are the answers? And you would see the child trying to do mathematics, trying to do science. Grabe, can you imagine doing that with no Wi-Fi, with no Zoom? Pero nagagawa nila. So another PowerPoint of two-way radios. Ayan. Teachers and kids. So I tell my students, I tell many of the schools I talk to, I said, I know we have a lot of problems. Even in Ateneo, we have lots of problems. Of course, our tuition went down. Of course, our enrollment went down. I know if you're in a private school, some private schools are closing. I know that too. But look at what these kids and these teachers have to undergo. No Wi-Fi at all. Their only gadget is, wala silang mobile load, nothing. Okay? Their cell phones don't even really work. And yet, they have two-way radios, and they are thriving through the generosity of Father Joel Almentras. So, when I look at this, ang galing ng Pilipinas, ng Pinoy, ng Pinay, ng Pilipinas. So, in spite of everything, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of all of these, in spite of what everybody is saying, okay, I acknowledge all of these are scary. Okay. Health concerns is scary, job losses, the death. It looks as if every week I'm attending the wake of a close friend. So my heart is broken again and again and again. And yet, how can you not be inspired when you look at these people? Jennifer, at Jeneline, at the teachers and the kids, foothills of the Sierra Madre. They are the most vulnerable. They're the ones who have the least. And yet, they really want to learn. So, kung gusto, talagang kakayanan. Kung ayaw, maraming dahilan. That's also a Filipino saying. So, I've seen it. I've witnessed it. Okay? And this is not just a feel-good story. Well, of course, it's a feel-good story. But it also helps us keep things in perspective. Because we who are more privileged do tend to keep on complaining. I actually say that to my students. This generation complains a lot. And I tell them, you know, yes, I feel you have to complain. You can rant it on social media to each other, heightening their own mental health issues. And yet I also tell them, aside from complaining, what else can you do? Yan na. I said, you want to complain? Go ahead. It's a free country. But aside from that, what can you do? Look at these other people. And I would now like to quote the Pope, Pope Francis. Okay? So Pope Francis, whom I adore, I love our Pope. I think he's a superstar Pope. And our Pope right now is very honest and he dares tell the truth. So in October 2020, this is what he said about education. It's a very long thing, but I just, you know, it's worth looking through the whole thing. But let me just look at what he said. Today, we are called to have the necessary parisha, frankness. Sinabi ng Pope, we have to be honest. Una-una nga, I was telling Miss Basas, I'm not sure how frank I can be because it's like overview of education. It's like, you know, di ba? Parang most of the webinars we have now are feel good. Eh. Pero, you know, sabi ni Pope, let's be frank. Sabi ko, sige. Kung kaya ni Pope maging frank, ako na rin. Will also be frank, di ba? To leave behind superficial approaches to education and the many shortcuts. Later on, we'll tell you about the shortcuts and why shortcuts are not the way to go and why shortcuts to learning can also never happen. Education is a natural antidote, says the Pope, to the individualistic culture. Yes, we are very, you know, Pilipinas tayo eh. We're supposed to rise as a nation and yet And yet look at what, many of our so-called leaders are very, very individualistic. And at times, it degenerates into a true cult of the self. Grabe si Pope, sinabi niya, cult of the self. Focus always just on the self. And the primacy of indifference. Wala silang pakialam. Maraming Filipinos, sayang ngayon, talagang cult of the self, tama si Pope, primacy of indifference. Leading young people. Sinabi talaga, ang galing ni Pope. We'll say a bit about this later on. Depression, addiction, aggressiveness, verbal hatred, bullying. Dami pang sinabi ni Pope. Pero, to educate is to take a risk. We never thought about that. When I saw the Pope do this, sabi ko, nga, no? I've been in education for more than 30 years. I started teaching when I was 20 years old. I was just 2 years older than the college students I taught. And it's just 2 days ago, my first batch, I graduated in 1987. My first batch graduated, of course, 4 years after, 1991. They interviewed me. And we reminisced about how it was, in the 1987, the late 1980s. Nakakataba ng puso. I'm so proud of them. So, but I never, to educate nga pala, no, is to take a risk, di ba? And to hold out to the present, a hope. So when we educate, we're actually giving hope. I never really thought about it. I never thought that education was a risk. But it is, according to the Pope. Tama naman si Pope, di ba? Because it is, we don't know what seeds we are planting. And actually right now, it is harder to plant the seeds right now. Okay, because society is in turmoil. But we continue because, yes, we take the risk. And I will tell you later on about how important it is that we need to be brave to take a risk. A hope that can shatter the determinism and fatalism. Galing nga ni Pope, di ba? Usually they say kung Catholics tayo, fatalistic tayo. Hindi. Pope Francis attacked it head on. He says, because we are Catholics, we are not fatalist. Fatalism just means, sige, wala tayong magawa dito. Hindi yan. We are called, I think I would say, the parable of the talents. We are called to do God's work here on earth. And maybe for me, the mission is education. For Miss Basas, the mission was education. They should continue educating you even now. For many of you, you're the laity, we're serving the community of God in the way we can. So we should not be fatalistic. Why? Because we are needed against the selfishness of the strong. Ang galing talaga ng Pope, selfishness of the strong. Yung mga malalakas, sinabi niya, he calls them out, selfishness. And the weak, conformism of the weak. And the ideology of the utopians. Sabi ni Pope, we should guard against the strong being selfish. And educate the weak so that they do not keep on just conforming. Ang galing. Parang sa bansa natin to, di ba? Of course, the Pope is just saying it's the Philippines. The Pope is saying this is the entire world. It is not just the Philippines. Okay? And sabi ni Pope, family is the first and essential place of education. So for all of us who are parents, many of the principals tell me, including in this pandemic, that they're very disappointed because the parents will say, alam mo, we pay you the tuition fee, kayo nang bahala sa anak namin. Mali yan, sabi ni Pope. Education is first and foremost family. Yes, you pay the tuition fee and we are grateful. But just because you pay the tuition fee does not mean that you relinquish all responsibility to the school. It cannot be. The first place, the first educators are the parents. You cannot say you're busy. You cannot say, I know all of the reasons. And the reasons are valid. But look again at Jennifer. Look again at Jeneline. Okay? Their parents, and if they can do it, our parents, our middle class parents, can certainly do it. Again, sinabi ni Pope, family is the first and essential place of education. Essential, no excuse. Hindi siya optional, essential yan. Where apart from first encounter with the gospel, children learn that education is above all a matter of love and responsibility, handed down from one generation to another. If you love your children, you will educate them. That's it. That's what the Pope is saying. Ang galing. So when I knew this, so when I looked at this, I said, sige, I'm actually going to talk to you based on, I'm very inspired by our Pope. based on what the Pope said, sorry, this is my third talk for the day. So based on what the Pope said, let's now thresh it out. So I'll be very frank with you. We'll see why shortcuts don't work. What is the problem with very, very much self-centeredness, indifference? We'll talk a bit about depression. I'll talk about risk and hope, okay, and the responsibility of parents. Okay, so in the spirit of the Pope, let us now be honest. I told you about the learning issues in the pandemic. That was my first slide. Okay, ito yung mga problema na ginawa ng pandemya. Yes, but we cannot keep on blaming the pandemic for everything. Yan yung mali natin. Okay, pandemya kasi. Yes, maraming winasak, maraming pinatay ang pandemya, but the learning issues which we have, many of them were here even before the pandemic. Because I've given talks on this ever since the year 2000. Many of our children cannot learn independently. They are dependent on tutors, they're dependent on parents, they're dependent on cheating, they're dependent on the internet. They cannot learn independently. They don't have solid study habits. They have lots of distractions and they abuse their gadgets. Gadgets are essential, but we should control gadgets rather than having gadgets control us. And this one, hanggang ngayon, parent-child conflict over discipline, and even before the pandemic, poor family communication, even before the pandemic, mental and emotional health issues. Okay, so we cannot keep on saying pandemic lang. We have to be honest enough, as the Pope said, to look at the underlying issues. I will go first to the last one because this one is often a matter of life or death. And, and we cannot afford to lose another young life. I've been on the forefront of mental health in the Ateneo even before mental health became a byword. As early as 2012, 2013, I already sounded the call for mental health. So when it became a byword, we were actually prepared. But we have lost, even if we're very, very vigilant, we have lost young people who just feel that life is no longer worth living. So I have to tackle this. Okay, these ones in quotation marks are actual questions from parents when I give them webinars. Okay, so this one is a common question. Parents say we are so stressed out. So are our kids. What do we do? We cannot avoid stress. Okay, so if you go to a stress management seminar that tells you avoid stress, that is wrong. And that is impossible to do. Stress will find us. The pandemic found us. We cannot bury our heads in the sand. There's always going to be stress. And so we have to learn to manage it. That's the only way. Okay, our young people want to escape from stress. They escape into gaming, social media, they escape into drugs. Okay. The escape usually doesn't work. So we have to face it square on. We have to learn to manage stress. And I tell people a little bit of fear is normal in the pandemic. Why is it normal? Because we don't know what's going to happen next. Because everything is so uncertain. Hindi natin alam kung okay na ba yung Delta variant. Hindi natin alam kung tama ba yung figures ng gobyerno. Hindi natin alam kung kailan yung next lockdown. Hindi natin alam. So because of uncertainty, it is actually natural to have a bit of anxiety. It is natural. It does not mean that you have mental health problems. I keep on saying that to people. They keep on saying, alam mo, hindi na ako makafunction. Sabi ko, and what will that do? Nanay ka, you cannot function, ang gagawin ng anak mo. Eh, anak ka, hindi ka makafunction, sayang yung tuition fee. So, a bit of fear is normal. A bit lang, a bit. Okay? If it incapacitates you, then you need help. So I tell parents, calm your children and calm yourselves. What can we do? All of us are in the same boat. And how do we calm ourselves? What do I do? I have not seen my son since January 2020. I have not hugged him in more than a year. So I know several of my close friends have died. Some of my students have passed away. And that is so unnatural. Because I thought that younger people are immune to the pandemic. Yes, they're supposed to be immune, but they have died. So everything is uncertain. But what can I do? Alam nga naman, I will say, naku, hindi ko na kaya. Eh, anong mangyayari sa estudyante ko ngayon, di ba? So, how do I calm when I say children, it's my son. Only have one child. He's fine. I've raised him to be very resilient. So he's alone, okay, in the early 20s, just finished, just graduated. He's quite strong. Okay, so how do I calm my students now? One way is I have to be calm in front of them. If I'm also very anxious, it won't help them. And how do I calm myself, even if my heart is breaking? Even if I want to cry, I cannot show it, at least not in front of them. I cry to Father Ben, I cry to my friends, but I don't cry in front of my students. Okay. We avoid obsessing about things beyond our control. I have stopped reading the headlines, even if I write for Inquirer, because they get me down. That's it. It's beyond my control. I will just vote the hope and pray to God to help me vote wisely. Pray to God that the elections will be clean. Pray to God that my students vote wisely. But beyond that, I cannot do anything much. I don't do social media, nothing. I don't have the time. Okay. So because I do not focus on things beyond my control, I focus on what I can do. I now have the time to do what I can do in my own little way. Okay, so we can brainstorm on space, routine. We need routine, structure. That's what's needed now, especially for education. We hone our skills. I tell my students, rather than crying all the time, study. I said the most heroic thing you can do is actually to learn and to still attend class. Help the frontliners. Okay, I've given talks to doctors and nurses, then dentists also. Oh, wow, they're so inspiring. Caring for each other. Okay, so we focus on what we can do rather than on things we cannot. And I don't have Viber, but a lot of the messages there are actually fake news. Not because your friends are sending you fake news. They don't know it's fake. They send fake news with the best of intentions. A lot of it is fake. A lot of it is they want to catch your attention. So a lot of news, they are designed to shock you. They're designed to titillate you. And I don't want to be shocked. I don't want to be titillated. They will not help me. So I avoid it. That's it. And of course, if I told the parents, if you're really extremely stressed out, that it's actually causing you to be dysfunctional in your family and in your job, you have to seek professional help. The good thing is talking about mental health now is no longer a stigma. The students talk about it all the time. Okay. And we have to find a sense of purpose. In the end, that's the only thing. If you know that what you're doing is meaningful, you will actually not be as stressed out. Okay? You are in Samahang Laiko. All of you, okay, you're more religious than I am. I love God. I wish I can be more religious. I'm not very religious. But you are. And you find meaning in your service to God. So I think when I talk to you, you're not as stressed out as other people. As maybe some students who say they don't believe in anything anymore. Nihilism na. Kawawa sila minsan. So a little bit, how do we manage anxiety? Breathe, mindfulness, look at words in alternative ways. Physical exercise is so important. So important. I tell my students, even if you're living in a very 25 square meter condo, you can still do Zumba inside your bedroom. Pwede yan. I said, there's no excuse not to exercise. Majority of kids do not exercise. The only exercise they have is their thumbs, basically gaming and social media. That's not good. Physical exercise ups the endorphins. Okay? Rather than taking medication, it will up it. Especially if, I tell my students, especially those of you who are lucky enough to live in a subdivision, those of you who are lucky enough to have access to a park, lucky enough even to go to Manila Bay, why nature also is an antidote to stress and anxiety. Look at this. This is one of my favorite screensavers. Okay? So even if you don't even read this, looking at the photo, the painting of the trees, the greenery, instinctively our blood pressure goes down. Our heart rate goes down. Psychology says the color green and the color blue are actually meant calm, and those are actually the color of nature. The tree and the sea and the sky. Yung mga nakaka-alarm, yung mga red, yung mga orange, mga ganon. So even if just looking at this, can you imagine how much more you would be calming down if you actually take a walk in the park? Of course, do social distancing with the mask, etc. Connect with others face-to-face or voice-to-voice. Even landlines are now thinking a comeback. Limit alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, gaming. Sleep, okay, quantity, we know it. 7 hours, it should actually be fine. But it's not just, my student told me this, Mom, I sleep at midnight and I wake up just in time for my 10 a.m. class. So grabe, 10 hours, di ba? Sabi niya, Mom, why is it I'm still so tired when I wake up? Di ba? I already have 10 hours of sleep. So he actually said that in class. And I said, okay, Iho, 12 to 10, grabe, okay? But I told him, do you sleep through the night? Sabi niya, Mom, what do you mean? I said, well, you don't wake up. You just go to sleep and you wake up, it's 10 a.m. So of course, alam mo, hindi yan nangyayari. He does not. Because his cell phone is beside him and every time there's a ping, he wakes up and he looks at it and he goes back to sleep. Sabi ko, hay nako. Okay. So he gets the quantity, perhaps. I don't think he gets 10 hours. He probably gets maybe 7. But the quality is horrible. Because in sleep, we have 4 stages. Stage 1, 2, 3, 4, then REM sleep. And you cannot shortcut that. Sabi ni Pope, no shortcuts, diba? So when we go to sleep, it's stage 1, stage 2. You're supposed to go to 3, 4, and 4 is good, and the REM sleep is good. But if you keep on getting interrupted, because in my student's case, because nga yung iPhone niya, lagi nandiyan, diba? Yung notification, ting ng ting, lahat ng Facebook, lahat ng Twitter niya. So, he goes into stage 1 and 2, then ting, and he wakes up. And then he goes back, stage 1 and 2 again, then ting, he wakes up. Wala na. So he never goes to 3, 4, and REM sleep. So he wakes up, he's groggy, he's irritable, he doesn't feel refreshed. Yun na yun. So I told my students, can you guys just turn off your phone? Natutulog naman kayo. Okay, hindi nila kaya. Doon ako natatak. Hindi nila kaya daw. Ay nako, sabi ko, fine, hindi nyo kaya. At least just turn off the sound. Mute the phone. Yan na. And I told them even the bright light, that blue light, whatever that white light that comes out of the phone interferes with melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that governs our circadian rhythm. It's the one that makes us go to sleep. So if you keep on looking at your gadgets or even Netflix, it's artificial light. That's not actually good. It's gonna get you wired. You won't be able to sleep well. At the very least, all gadgets, turn it off 1 hour before bed. The best thing to do 1 hour before going to bed, listen to music, pwede yan. Read a book, a printed book, okay? not the iPad, a printed book. And then just best one, talk to your family, hug each other, communicate. That's the best. Take a warm bath, drink milk. Those are the things that are going to make you fall asleep. Not gadgets, seriously. Seek support and seek professional help. And then I told you that we cannot afford to lose another young life. So the 5 of us, all of us are licensed clinical psychologists. I'm so proud that the other 4 are my Ph.D. students who are now in the Ateneo Psychology Department. They are now developing very good careers for themselves. So we wrote this in 2013. Warning signs about depression, including suicide. Self-harm, anxiety, including phobia, panic attack, grief, natural disaster crisis. And it's for the layman. What are the symptoms? What to say, what to do, detailed scripts. If you don't know how to talk to your child, the teachers don't know how to talk to their students, we have real scripts there because we do that all the time. And resources at the back of the book. So just in case you feel that this would resonate with you, it's done by Anvil. It's available in Lazada, Shopee, or if you want an ebook in Amazon, Google Books, etc. Because we cannot afford to have another young person feel that they have no reason to live. We cannot. We cannot do that. So let's now end. Mental health is actually my most requested webinar. It's the one I don't like to talk about, but it's the most requested. And this is my batch. This is my high school batch. November 27 on Saturday, they asked me to give a talk on mental health, specifically on depression, signs and symptoms and warning, anxiety, the different kinds, and a bit of grief. And we will also talk about how to manage it. So the registration is here, tinyurl.com, MHM, Mental Health Matters, November 27, and also email. So this is done for the benefit of my batch. Several of my batch, high school batch, are frontliners. We have several doctors. And several of us have been affected by the pandemic, so we are raising funds to support the people who need help the most. So just in case this resonates with you, you can join us. Okay, easier topics now. Let's go to the other topics that are not necessarily life or death. Distractions and discipline, yung sinabi ni Pope, diba? So real questions. How do we keep kids away from online games and YouTube, make them focus on its school time? How do I instill discipline? Because I won't be home. 11-year-old, walang disiplina. Yung anak niya sa kolehiyo, wala rin disiplina. How do we encourage our child to exercise on screen the whole day? Also keeps rubbing her eyes. One, very easy. No one is supposed to be on screen the whole day. No one. I am not even on screen the whole day. If I were on screen the whole day, I would be rubbing my eyes. Nakakaawa itong bata, of course. How do we encourage our child to exercise? Many kids today don't like to exercise. They're actually not motivated to do it. So you don't encourage. You actually structure exercise in the day. Put it in the schedule. That's it. Okay? They don't even have to think about it. Everything here is discipline and structure. A little bit on discipline. 1 to 7 years of age, psychologists, we call it the age of regulation. You tell the child very clearly what he or she is supposed to do. Honey, I love you very much. You're 6 years old. Okay? And you're going to use the computer for your online class when you are in prep and when you're in kinder and grade 1. And yes, for kinder and prep, you'll be online for 1 to 2 hours a day. That's it. We are not going to, because we know and we love you, we are not going to let you be online the entire time. That's it. Okay, you make very clear to the child what to do. No ifs, no negotiation, no anything. It's called the age of regulation. And if you do that clearly, you should be fine. However, many parents cannot do that. For some weird reason, many parents now want to be friends with their kids. That is why when their kids grow up, they now have problems, okay, including mental health issues. That's the irony. Okay, the parents who feel who are very lenient with their kids actually have kids right now. When the kids enter their tweens and teens, the kids now have so many problems. So when you go to 8 to 12 years, hindi na pwedeng regulation. Ito na. You now have to be good role models for your children. I've heard this scene. I actually talked to some schools. The youngest I've talked to is in grade 5. They're so cute. They're really so cute. Okay, so I remember one of the, may sumbong yung isang bata. Sinabi niya, teacher, alam mo, sabi ng mami ko, hindi ako pwede mag-gadget. Pero yung lagi naman siya nag-Twitter. Yan na, natatawa ako doon. Okay? Sabi ko, tama kaya, iho. Sabihin mo yung nanay mo, di ba? You know that whatever rules she gives you, she also has to follow. So now, parents, we have to be good role models. That's it. Honey Karandang, my mentor, tells me, values are caught rather than taught. Okay? This is one reason why many young people today do not listen to their parents. They're actually very disrespectful to their parents. I've told them. They tune out. They will tell me, mom, kasi naging ng naging eh. So I said, your parents nag you because they love you. Pero yan nga, they tune the parents out. So, and many times they say, mom, we don't even listen to them because they keep on nagging and then they don't do naman what they tell us that we're supposed to do. So yun din. So you have to, 8 to 12 years and older parents, you have to model what you preach or else you have no credibility with today's children, really. You tell them they have to go to bed early and you don't go to bed early. You tell them they cannot do gadgets and you're doing gadgets all the time. Okay? So, thing with gadgets are actually necessary right now. So there's no way we can avoid it. So the best way is to communicate with your 8 to 12-year-old, negotiate. Okay, this time negotiate. Tell them that, you will have the Wi-Fi on for a certain period of time, but you don't want them on Wi-Fi 24/7. That is the biggest problem of Filipino kids, that you have Wi-Fi 24/7. And sana, I tell, when we teachers talk, we wish that the kids would actually just study the whole day with Wi-Fi. They don't. They study for a couple of hours and they do other things which they shouldn't be doing. And the parents think that they're studying. Okay, so again, good role models. What if by age 13 up, you haven't done this? Mahirap na. This is when a lot of the clients I've I'm doing mental health with college students. Yan na. Walang regulation, walang limitation. So yun na, when they come to us, ang dami ng problema. Ito na yung depression, anxiety. Ito na yung walang structure. Ito na yung papakamatay na. Ito na yung galit na galit sa tatay, nanay. Ito na yung galit sa mundo. No choice. Okay? If you still haven't done this, and your communication with your child is not very effective, then you have to inspire them. This is not easy to do. How do I do this with my students? Because I don't know my students. Because when my students come to me, they're already 18 years old, they're already 19, they're 20, galit na sa mundo. Ang dami ng depression, ang dami ng ADHD, ang dami ng medication. Wala na, I still try my best to inspire them. The only way I can do to inspire them is to talk about former students. And because I know my former students, I tell them about Rosel Ambubuyo. I tell them about Chris Tew. I tell them about Lionel Tanganko, Haya Bendanya, ang dami. So I tell them, alam mo, ito yung nangyayari sa kanila. So I try to inspire them with students who were once also in their place. That's the only way I can do it because they are not my natural kids. When I get them, many of them are broken. Many of them are wounded. Many of them are resentful and many of them hate the world. It is so difficult. But I have to inspire. And I am too old to inspire them. Sometimes they ask about, many students like to know what it was like when I was young. So I would tell them about myself. But more than that, I would tell them about younger kids. So parents, what should you do? Parents, you have to inspire your children. You talk to your kids. Tell them about the failures, the errors you made before. Tell them about the difficulties that you underwent, really. And don't just dwell on the difficulties. Tell them how you overcame them. Do not stop with the negative. Tell them how you overcame it with the love of your family, the support of your friends, the love of your teachers. You have to inspire your children. Our youth today is not inspired by anything. They are so jaded. They are so disillusioned. So that is the challenge for us. I don't have much time for this one. If I had more time, we did a book and we interviewed more than 4,000 students from several schools about how they dealt with gadgets and online learning. And usually if I have time, I would quote from them from the several schools, but I don't have the time. A little bit on social media. Social media, yes, all of us are using it, but just be very, very careful, okay? Isolation from the real world as a result of social media addiction causes anxiety and depression. Internet addicts have 10 to 20% smaller brain areas, responsible for speech, memory, motor control, emotion, sensory, and other information. There is a dopamine rush. This is the addiction. It is addictive. The reason why everybody is on social media is because it's addictive. Even when one receives verification and support via social media platforms. So it leads a lot to addiction. Even many adults are addicted. Recommended treatment for internet and social media addiction is working directly with an experienced therapist. Kung ako, let's not get addicted. Once you're addicted, mahirap na. Okay, so control social media. Use it only at certain times. Use it only for work. For lots of the other things, don't be sucked into the black hole of the negativity that's there. Okay. And then internet gaming disorder symptoms, we know about this: withdrawal, tolerance, salience, food modification, gaming. This is from WHO, very, very recent. Takot na takot sila, excessive screen use and gaming during COVID-19. Ang dami-dami nangyayari, all bad stuff. Okay, this is around the world. And I just want to, I talk to my students about this one. All of these things we already know: excessive screen use, cyberbullying. The one that makes me a bit worried is that right now, many of the online games have gambling-like elements. So the games are not just only after our attention, they're now after the money. And I know of, there's a certain school that talked to me and asked me to intervene because they have grade school students stealing money from their parents during the pandemic in order to buy loot boxes and stuff they can use for gaming online. Nakakaawa, ganun na. Marketing of video games has increased during this pandemic. Yes, they're the ones that are making a lot of money, actually. Games with gambling-like elements may have financial implications and increase the risk of migration to gambling. So I asked my students if this is true, and they said yes, this is true. It's from WHO. You can go to WHO website and look at this. This is the book I was telling you about. It has testimonials about how the best students can use social media wisely, how some students dealt with gaming addiction, okay? How do you motivate to read and print, and how to educate, etc. If you're interested, it's also available in Anvil website. Structure is so important. Willpower may work, but genuine learning requires practice and structure. Before students go to school, there's a structure in school. Whether they like it or not, they physically have to go to campus. Right now, we're stuck at home. And we're stuck at home. Wala silang structure externally. Wala rin silang structure internally. Yan na ang pinakamalaking problema in online learning. It is not the lack of gadgets. So sina Jennifer kanina, sina Jeneline, the ones in Gabaldon, they don't have much external structure, but they are so motivated to learn. So kaya nila. Ngayon, the irony is many of the wealthiest kids, and I teach many of them, they don't have any intrinsic habits because all their lives is the tutor answering the work for them. Ngayon, hindi na kaya ng tutor, nahirapan na sila. And wala rin sila, hindi sila pumapasok sa eskwela. So what's happening now? DepEd says that the biggest problem right now, I think actually it is not lack of access to gadget. The biggest problem right now is cheating. That's the irony. They have the gadgets, but they cheat. Yan na. Yan ang nakakainis. Yan ang nakakalungkot. They have all the gadgets, they are fooling themselves, fooling their parents. And if we have a generation of cheaters, what is going to happen to our country? That gives me nightmares sometimes. Right now, you can Google it. DepEd, biggest problem is cheating. So we need structure in order to learn. Structure, home environment to make motivation a habit. There has to be a routine. There online class, and then homework, and then exercise, and then family bonding, dinner together. Kailangan yan. Space kung kaya. Kung hindi kaya, earphones. Okay? Not everybody has the big house. Most people only have 1 to 2 rooms. Earphones then, it's fine. Right now, my husband is actually beside me. He has an earphone. Yun na, tapos na. Okay, I structure it. He knows I have a talk with you. So he does not schedule the talk with his own thing. So pati kami, we have to do it. It's not ideal, but we do it. Time for activities and eat dinner. And it's not ideal, but should be workable for all. And then I've written about more about structure. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not a solo act. It's not something you just do at once. It is a habit. It's a habit built years and years and years. Okay? Aristotle, he said this for the time of Christ. I tell my students, growth rather than grades. An A is fine. I'm quoting Father Ben. Okay? The scary thing with many of today's kids is they're so grade conscious. Private schools, public schools, so grade conscious. I don't understand it. I told them, why do you care about grades? I said, we're the lowest in the world. Whatever grades we give each other, it's not even valid. For me, it's not valid. And I actually tell Ateneo, can we just not give grades? Ayaw nila. Okay, so I'm still forced to give grades, even if grades actually are inflated now. Okay, the topics we take in are maybe only half or 2/3 of what we used to do. So for me, it is actually not the standard. But, well, that's what the school wants, so I continue it. But even so, I tell my students, I put in my quizzes are the minimum. I prefer to do oral exams rather than written exams. I prefer to do live class and have them participate rather than homeworks wherein they can just Google the answer. So again, I tell my students, growth rather than grades. Father, in my most anxious and grade conscious students, and there's so many of them, nakakaawa talaga sila. I actually asked Father Ben to talk to them. And Father Ben says this. An A is fine. Of course it's fine. But it's not the most important thing. Focusing on A for its own sake paralyzes you. If you just go for the grades and not for the learning, if you just cheat, you don't really want to learn, you become very anxious. This is the anxious generation. More than depression, everyone is anxious. Wala pa nangyayari sa buhay nila, anxious na. They are scared to recite, sabi ng mga grade school. They are scared to make a mistake. Grade 1 na, scared to make a mistake na nakakaawa. And they engage in toxic competition. You know, they have friends, but they call each other frenemies. Nakakaawa rin eh. In my time, there's no such thing as frenemy. You're either a friend or you're not a friend. Right now, you're a frenemy. I don't even understand what frenemy means. Pero yan yun, yung parang friend, pero hindi na totoong friend. No wonder they're so lonely. No wonder they're so anxious. No wonder they're so depressed. The poor kids, really. So they engage in toxic competition with each other just for grades. So they cheat. They give up at the first hint of discomfort. You give them a harder test, magagalit na sila. Okay, they will say it's not fair. They will say, why didn't you teach it? They avoid ordinary challenges. And pwede pa sana to, but they never develop the mindset, the attitudes, the skills that our poor Philippines desperately needs. We are so, alam mo, they say Filipinos are resilient. I'm not even sure. Maybe we are in other ways. I think the older generation is. I cannot say the younger generation is. There are always exceptions. There are so many, as I told you. I inspire my students with stories of my former students who are resilient. There are. But maybe the average person is no longer resilient. The average upper middle class student who has many blessings lacks grit. They also lack gratitude. Okay, so they are very conscious about their privileges. They always want, what can we get? What are our rights? But responsibility, nawawala na yun. And we don't know why. It is a generational thing. And many psychologists, including in the US, have said it's the way we parent. So parenting plays a big role. Also, they also say social media and the internet and the instant gratification culture is wreaking havoc. Remember, the Pope tells us, you do not want shortcuts. And yet, if you're always with gadgets, you're so used to getting what you want kaagad. Eh, sabi ni Pope, hindi pwede. Alam natin, hindi pwede. Eh, kung gano'n yung mga bata ngayon, they cannot. They want the instant answer, so they cheat. Rather than study hard, they cheat. That's it. And that's so kawawa, because we need them. They're the future. And what kind of future will we have? So this is maybe the biggest thing. And I tell them, what does growth entail? So I tell them, I said, I used to sit in the Ateneo Admissions Committee. Minsan natatawa ako when I look at the essays that they write. Diba? And Ateneo is the dream school of most of the Filipinos. Practically almost all private schools, Ateneo is the number one choice. And then when I read their essays, they would say, I want to come to Ateneo. It's my dream school because I want to grow. Napapatawa ako. Sabi ko, alam ba nila what growth really means? They don't know. It sounds very nice, diba? Even private schools, even the schools I come from, we always say we want our kids to grow. But do we really want our kids to grow? Really? Do we really know what growth entails? So when my kids come to me, I tell them, first day pa lang, before they can complain, I actually tell them this. I said, fine, you guys chose Ateneo. Why is it your dream school? Ayan na. Kasi raw the quality is good, the ganyan. Okay. Sabi ko, fine, you're all correct. I said, you want Ateneo because of the excellence, the ganyan. I said, so, excellence means that we have a certain standard and you have to meet that standard. And if you don't meet that standard, we don't want you to keep on having excuses. Ang dami nila excuses ngayon. May pandemic daw, may bagyo raw. Sabi ko yung bagyo nasa Northern Luzon, wala yan sa Quezon City. Yung mga ganon, okay? Or may mental health sila. And yes, the bad thing is many of them really have mental health problems. As for others, they use it as a mental health card, as an excuse. So I told them, you came to Ateneo. You chose Ateneo. So you really want to grow. But growing means, what does growth really mean? Growth is really uncomfortable. Growth is not this nice thing that I'm growing. No, I said, guys, if everything comes easy to you, you're not growing at all. You're never challenged. You're not learning anything new. I said, by its very definition, growth is uncomfortable. Sometimes growth is painful. Growth means you're going to make mistakes. Growth means you will bounce back from the mistakes. If you never let yourself make a mistake, you never let yourself grow. That's it. That's it now. As easy as that. And as basic as that. Angela Duckworth wrote a book 2016, entitled Grit. And she says for her, grit is passion and perseverance. I kind of agree. I'm not so sure. I think this is very American. Perseverance, I agree. Passion, baka hindi masyado. I would rather, we're now doing a Filipino study on resilience and grit. So I'm the one heading it. It is, I have a team of 30 very good faculty from all the science departments of the Ateneo. And what we are finding out is that, yes, some of our gritty students have perseverance, passion, some of them have, some of them don't. But very Pinoy, that many of them are very brave. Many of them are very strong. So I would rather say the Filipino grit would be perseverance, courage, and strength. Okay? So some of them say, we actually don't have much passion for what we're learning, but we have to learn because, very Filipino nga, they say, because we have to be the breadwinner for our family. Hindi yan lumalabas sa United States, but lumalabas yan sa Pilipinas. And I think that's very Filipino. And I think that's it resonates more with me. That how many of our students are gritty? Not very many, but there are. So we interview the gritty students. And it does come out that even if they don't really, sometimes they say that the subject is really difficult and they're not very passionate about it, but they persevere because nga, they have to do it for the sake of their parents. And that is, US kasi is very individualistic. We're doing it for our own honor, our own pride, which is fine. But in the Philippines, hindi. In the Philippines, there's a community dimension that I think is lost. That's why I really like that you call yourself Samahang Laiko. Samahan. Samahan tayo. Hindi tayo nag-iisa. And yan na yung tinatakutan ko kasi parang yung mga bata ngayon, nag-iisa na sila eh. Nag-iisa sila sa kwarto, nag-gaming na mag-isa, nagsa-social media na mag-isa. Yung friends sila, hindi naman totoong friends o frenemy pa. Nakakaawa sila. And that is something we have to, hindi tayo pwedeng magalit sa kanila. I know of many parents who say, alam mo, Doc, nag-OA na, wala na, nagkukulang sa pansin lang sila. I said, baka nga kulang sa pansin. Bigyan natin ng pansin. So it's actually very tiring for me. Because I have so many mentally ill people. But they are there, they're alive. So we have to reach out to them. Okay, going back, grit, a little bit of it. This is what I show my students. As I'm treating them like my students now. Steve Maraboli is actually an inspirational speaker. Life does not get easier or more forgiving. I tell my students that. I said, just because you get summa cum laude in Ateneo, you graduate from Ateneo, doesn't mean life is easier. Maybe in the sense, yes, that you have the diploma. But hindi. If you think that just because you're an honor student, life becomes easier, hindi rin. But we get stronger and more resilient. This is Angela Duckworth. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future day in, day out. Not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years. To be able to be very good in mathematics, it is a habit honed for years. They cannot Google math. Yan na yun. They cannot give up on it. My best math students have been doing math for decades. Yun na. And working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Si Pope ulit, di ba? No shortcut. Sabi ni Pope, hindi pwede superficial. Ito nga yung sinasabi ni Pope. Yun na. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Hindi tayo nagmamadali. We should not compete against each other. Why should we? Who cares? Rather than competing against each other, we should lift each other up. Yun. Growth mindset. This is by Carol Dweck, who is the mentor of Angela Duckworth. Growth mindset. There's a fixed mindset and growth mindset. Okay? If you have a fixed mindset, talent is natural. Hindi ako Filipino-Chinese, so hindi ako magaling sa math. That's very fixed mindset. Seriously, do you really, really think that math ability is inherited? I wish it is. If it were inherited, edi magaling na tayong lahat. Filipinos and Chinese have been intermarrying for centuries. All of us have Chinese DNA. And yet, we are at the bottom of the world in math. So it is not inherited. It is more of a cultural thing. We are the only society that actually is very proud that we're bad in math. Diba? I've stopped, before the pandemic, I've stopped appearing in talk shows because I'm actually disgusted by the things that in 5 minutes, they'll ask me something like, they're very pretty, they're very nice, and then they would say, ha, 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 they would say, naku, ma, ma hates me, gaganon sila. Or I'm bad at math. And then, I don't know what they expect me to say. They would say something like, math doesn't really like me. Gusto kong sabihin, alam mo, math doesn't really care. Math is neutral. Okay? Sabi ko, it's not whether math likes you or not. It is, how you approach math. And in 5 minutes, they want me to give them the secret of being good in math. And I would actually just tell them, there's only one secret, hard work. Tapos na. Done. And they don't want to hear that. Filipinos don't like to hear hard work. They want to see if there's a secret sauce. They want to see if there's a instant lotto. They want to see if there's whatever. Wala eh. So fixed mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you think that talent is natural. And you measure your ability. It's always about the grades. And everything, challenging tasks, effort, setbacks, measures your ability. You always pit yourself against another person. And the world is full of threats and defenses. Of course, you're very anxious. Of course, the kids are very anxious. They don't dare recite. Kasi nga, magkakamali sila. But if they don't even recite, how can they learn, di ba? If you have the growth mindset, you say ability can be developed through hard work and feedback. Feedback also, hindi lang hard work. Okay, feedback. So feedback means that those who really want to learn will actually seek out the teachers who are going to challenge them. So I tell my students, you came to Ateneo. Please do not waste Ateneo by just going for the easy A professors. Sadly, there are also easy A's teachers everywhere. There are teachers who want to be popular and just give A's to everybody. They're popular, but also the students don't respect them. The students like them, but the students don't respect them. But sadly, many students like those professors, and we cannot blame them. Everybody wants to be liked. But if everybody thinks like that, again, what is going to happen to the future of the Philippines? Diba? Kung lahat, gusto nila ng easy A kasi ayaw nila ng feedback eh. And some of my colleagues who are still trying to give feedback, sinasabi nila ngayon, nako, I've given so many webinars. How do you talk to kids? Kasi sabi nila, yung mga bata ngayon, sasabihan mo lang, magagalit na raw, iiyak pa. Nako, I tell my students this. So I talk about growth mindset to my students. I told them, if you're being given critique, it's because the teacher cares for you. If the teacher doesn't care, the teacher won't even open her mouth. I said, so if it's critique, do not take it personally. Do I give critique? Yes, every day. So far, do they cry? So far, wala. Sa akin, wala. And they actually thank me. But maybe it's the way I give it. But I talk to them the way I'm talking to you now. So everything I tell them. So this slide, my students see it. Okay. So everything, challenging tasks, effort, setbacks, is seen as being helpful to learn and grow. It is a world of opportunities to improve. So I tell my students, if I give you a challenging exercise, do not hyperventilate and say you will have depression and mental health, because that's ridiculous. I said, you take a deep breath, you try your best, you do not get it, you cooperate and you talk it over with your friend. You still cannot get it, you ask me. That's it. Tapos na. I said, then you'll be proud because you learned something new. Yan na. So growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Very important. Carol Dweck wrote about it in Mindset, in her book, Mindset. And I've quoted Carol Dweck in so many articles, including in my books, because I find this to be really resonating. And how now, parents? How do we help our kids develop a growth mindset? Number one, parents, if I had even more time, I would give a growth or grit mindset 2 to 3 hours yun. And usually, we will have an exercise. I would actually be giving you like a questionnaire. You have to first reflect on your own mindset, diba? Before you can help your own kids, you have to first look at yourself. Do you have a growth mindset? So may ganon. And then reflect on it. And there's no right and wrong answer. If you feel you have a fixed mindset, then try, because you're an adult, try to develop a growth mindset. Biggest one, emphasize effort over ability. When you praise your children, when you're learning, do not say you are so smart. No such thing. Okay, so suppose your child does well in an exam. You don't say, wow, You're so smart. Nagmana ka sa akin. That's totally, totally wrong. Okay? Nakakatawa yan. Very Filipino. Pero hindi yan growth mindset. Fixed mindset yan. You can just say this. You can say, you did very well in the exam. Look at how well your efforts paid off. You can say, I'm very proud at the effort you put in. You have to emphasize the effort because effort is something they can control. You do not emphasize their genetic smartness because the genetic smartness is something they cannot control. Okay, what if they don't do well in the test? Okay, then you don't scream at them. Do not scream at them. The kids will tune you out. So you will say, you will take a deep breath. You will be very patient. They are your children. You'll be very patient and you will say, anak, I know that this is below your expectations, your own expectation. Do not say it's your expectation. Huh? Do not say it's the expectation of the parents. It's the expectation of the own child. So you can say, let me help you. Let us brainstorm ways for you to be able to do better and put in more effort. In what way can I help? Should I exempt you from a household chore? Should I put a structure in? Should maybe my father and we will turn off the TV when you are studying? Ganon. That's the way to do it. It is not, please do not say, which tutor do I get for you? Do not say, sige, I will help you cheat. Maraming parents, sumboyan mga bata. The parents are the ones sitting beside their kids right now, in Zoom class and whispering the answers to the children. It is so sad. Yung nagsumbong sa akin, mga bata. Yun din. So that's not. You're going to guide your kids to do their best. And if they do their best, they will pass. Do not care about honors. But do not do the work for them. Okay, so you need to emphasize effort over ability. And do not compare your children with each other. You cannot have, kunwari si Bunso, sasabihin niya, bakit si ate, nag-aaral lang siya ng 30 minutes, ako, 3 oras na. Bakit parang mas mataas pa yung grade niya? I also tell my students, it's because all of us have different backgrounds. The Lord blessed us with different talents. Except the school has the same expectation. So I said, if your ate is better than you in science, but you're better than your ate in art, and you want to have the same grade, then of course, you have to study more than your ate to get the same grade in science. The same way your ate has to work harder in art to get the same grade as you. Sabi ko, ganun yun. And I always keep on telling my students, who hell cares about grades? Sorry, I shouldn't have said the word hell, but sometimes it works. So I would tell them, why? Sabi ko, guys, just stop obsessing about grades. If you do your best, you will pass. Grades are very inflated now. And many schools don't dare flunk anyone because they need the money for tuition. I'm just going to be very blunt with you. So they are hesitant to give Fs. Ang dami ko eskwelahan na yan ang sinasabi. So I tell the parents and the kids, don't think about flunking. You probably will not flunk. And don't keep on harping about honors because that's not even the point here. You harp about growth and learning because that's what our country needs. And parents, you have to model learning from mistakes. Let your children experience discomfort. They will be experiencing discomfort. Do not step in and try to take away the discomfort from them. Learn from their mistakes and rise again. In math, in Filipino, I keep on saying math, but the funny thing is somehow, in many private schools especially, they say that the subject they find hardest is Filipino. I don't understand it. We're in the Philippines. I don't know why they find Filipino difficult. That's a mystery I don't understand. Okay, sports. So talk about times when you struggled or even failed and what you learned. Mistakes are a natural part of learning and they're essential for growth. It's 4 o'clock, I'm about to wrap up. So these are what I tell my students. If I teach a class of science majors, I show them this slide, Albert Einstein. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. If I do a class of athletes, and many of our basketball team, and I'm very proud of our basketball team, and varsity athletes are under me, so I do Michael Jordan, on the importance of, doing mistakes. Sabi ni Jordan, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So I tell my students, if you guys never, ever take a risk, if you guys never fail, yes, you might not you'll never fail. Tama. Because you never risk it. But you'll never grow. And you'll never be Michael Jordan. Tapos na. Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. Larry Bird is Larry Bird. And you can put in Heidelin Diaz is Heidelin Diaz. Because they have trained for years. Heidelin Diaz, they did not just train and cram it in one day, 1 month, or even 1 year. She's training for years. And I'm very sure she did not always succeed. She has failed. So si Jordan has failed over and over again. When I do this, show this, usually we would have it would actually hit the students. And we would have a discussion on what failure is. And my favorite, actually, this is Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. Life is not about how fast you run. Who cares how fast you run, diba? Or how high you climb. Who cares again, diba? But how well you bounce. How well you bounce back when you have failure. It is not who has the best money. It's not who was the highest mark. It's not who has the most honors. It's not. It is it's just who is the most resilient rather than who is the best. That's what our country needs. The most resilient people. And as early as 1985, I also teach positive psychology to psychology seniors. 1985, wala pa nagsasalita about mental health. Sinabi na to ng psychologist. Resilience is our ability to bounce back. Again, resilere is a Latin word, bounce back from life's challenges and unforeseen difficulties, providing mental protection from emotional and mental disorders. One reason why our young people today have so many mental health problems is yes, some are resilient, many are not. This is my latest book, and everything I've told you today is here. It includes over-under parenting, how to discipline, growth mindset, avoiding instant gratification, learning strategies, a sense of purpose. Last week, the Anvil actually hosted a book club wherein I was very privileged to talk to more than 50 people who actually bought the book, readers who bought the book, who actually read the book, and we talked about this. It was so much fun. And, we went way over time. Supposed to be 1.5 hours. I think we went to 3.5 hours because they read the book. And there's so many questions. So in case I think this might be this book would have almost everything that I said today, because this was launched last year in the middle of the pandemic. It contains the most common questions parents, teachers, and students asked me during the pandemic. I will now end with, count your blessings and not your burdens. Let us raise our children to have grit and gratitude, to learn effectively, to make the most of what they have, to find purpose and to serve others. And for people with very many mental health problems, the best way for us to find ourselves, our young people to find themselves, is to lose yourself in the service of others, Gandhi. That's ultimately the only way. If you feel that your life has meaning, that is the only way for you not to end it. Thank you, stay well, and God bless. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Queena Lee Chua, for that wonderful presentation and inspiring and challenging talk. So maraming salamat, Dr. Chua. And we will now proceed for the Q&A. So like this morning, the process of our Q&A is we would like to ask the participants to write down their questions on the chat box, okay? And we will read them. But Dr. Queena, I have first 2 questions for you that they have written down on the chat box earlier. So let me read this. So habang ka nagsasalita, mayroon na silang question. Can you believe that? So ito po yung unang question, Dr. Chua. May I please know if the current, I'm sorry, hindi po yun. So ito po yung una. I think this is a blessing for you. Dr. Chua, in a two-way radio, is the other set held by teacher? What is the minimum distance between teacher and student? What is the cost of one set? Mukhang magdo-donate ata to.
Okay. Salamat. Yung nakakaalam talaga dito, si Father Ben Nebres and Father Joel Almendras and Ace. What I know is, in the two-way radio, one end is held by the student, and yes, you're right. The other end is held by the teacher. So the video that I saw, wherein they demonstrated the two-way radio, talagang teacher yung kabila. So kung narin sasabihin ng teacher, of course, they cannot see each other, radio to eh. So the teacher will be saying, okay anak, ano ang sagot sa unang tanong? And then, they would have both the same handout. And then the child will actually also have the same thing, and the child will say something over the two-way. So yes. What is the minimum distance? I think it might be maximum distance rather than minimum distance. Minimum distance would be like, I think, in any two-way radio, neighbors can actually talk to each other. What I know with this one is, according to Father Ben, that the kids are actually in their houses and some of the teachers are in the school, but they are in the same barrio. They're in the same barangay. So I think there's a certain number of meters na ano. How much it is, I did ask Father Nebres about that. He does not know the exact thing, but one of my friends looked at it online and said that you can actually get a working one for as little as 1,000 pesos. The better ones actually are 2,000 to 3,000. So sabi ng anak ko, kaibigan ko na gusto niya mag-donate din, is kaya naman. Talaga nakaka-donate sila ng set. So if I were you, you can actually Google two-way radios, local two-way radios. I think they're being sold even on Lazada. And you can see made in China. And you can see how, the specifications there. So that's a good question naman.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Chua. There's another question. Actually, it's not a question. It's more of affirmation. So it was a beautiful presentation, Dr. Lee Chua. Your talk was so powerful and inspiring. I learned a lot from it. Thank you very much. Ayan.
Wow. Salamat. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So another one, Dr. Chua. I think it's also an affirmation. Thank you, Dr. Chua, for your inspiring and comprehensive talk on helping children learn meaningful. God bless you and your family. Wow.
God bless you too. Salamat. Salamat. Sisters and brothers. Salamat.
So mukhang Dr. Chua, mga religious talaga to kasi walang question, puro affirmation. So, so I hope that, I think, brothers and sisters, if you really have some questions, ito po ay, expert in mental health or etc. So pagkakataon na po natin. But of course, we have limited time. Pero I really encourage the participants to please raise some questions if you would like to do that. So that your questions, you never know, your questions can also help other participants. Okay? So sige po.
Sir Albert?
Yes po?
I am getting private chats. Hindi ako, okay, my eyesight is not good. And nahihirapan ako mag-multitask.
Okay.
So ngayon nakikita ko yung mga direct message. There is one from, the first direct message is very nice. It's from a former student. Hi, from my former student. I go to you also. I'm so happy that you reached out. There are other messages though that are not as happy as this one. Nako, Brother Albert, ito ginawa yatang private message, pero tanong siya, pero ganito, hindi ko na lang sasabihin yung pangalan.
Okay.
Hindi ko naman kayo kilala. Hindi ko naman yata estudyante to. So yung estudyante ko, hello na, kilala ko siya. So hi to my former student. I'm so happy you reached out. This is another person with a direct message. Hindi ko sasabihin yung pangalan, but this is I'm reading now the message. Brother Albert, it's about mental health, Brother Albert. Kaya medyo baka sensitive. Pero but this might help the other people. So, yung tanong nito ng kaibigan natin,
yes,
ipaparaphrase ko na lang kasi ayaw kong malaman natin kung sino to. Diba? Parang ano. So, basically, I'll just paraphrase the question. Okay, so this is quite a long message about ano. Okay. The message has something to do with depression and anxiety. Okay, and the person is asking on behalf of a loved one. Okay, so how do you deal with it? Okay, the tips I can give, aside from the tips that One is the person is also asking, how do you know when you need to see a doctor? Okay, so ganito. If your loved one or yourself, if you feel that your depression or anxiety is already interfering with your work, even your volunteer work, or in the case of your child, your schooling, as in hindi na talaga kayo nakaka-function well in work, you break down, you know that you're not as effective, kayo kasi makakaalam eh, then I would highly tell you, you probably need professional help. You need to see a doctor. You need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, depending on that's one. Okay. How about depression? Okay. Depression, I'm more worried about because depression, I mean, major depressive disorder is highly associated with suicide, di ba? Sabihin ko na. So medyo yan yung nakakatakot. So if your loved one or yourself, you feel is talagang depressed na talaga, para sa akin, it's an urgent matter. You may even need medication. Hindi lang therapy. Hindi lang yung talk therapy. You might need medication na. Kung medication, ang gagawin ninyo would be psychiatrist, MD, hindi PhD. You can look at go to your nearest hospital. Psychiatry, they can do it online. Many psychiatrists I know are doing it online. So you don't have to worry about go to the hospital, look at your department of psychiatry, and make an appointment at once. For me, that would be that's one thing. What are the other tips I can give? Alam mo, this is so weird, pero talaga physical exercise is so important. Yung talagang the gadget thing is also, if they can minimize their gadgets, is also important. But most important, especially this is your loved one, you have to communicate with either, hindi ko kasi alam to kung anak mo to, ikaw to, o nanay mo to, asawa mo to. It's just that I don't want to ask because I know this is a private message. But you have to really be very patient. You have to really be very, very patient because minamahal mo to eh. So I know maybe you're tired, mahaba kasi yung message. Pagod na rin itong, kasama natin. We know. Pero remember, this is a human life. Hindi na to education lang. This is human life. So we have to take it seriously. So the person who did this, you're in my prayers. God bless. You're in a difficult position. It also takes courage for you to, I don't know you, you don't know me, and you actually just shared a very private message. So thank you for sending me that very long private message, which might help also the other people here. So God bless you for this person.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chua. And I think I have a couple of lined up of questions here. So first is, aside from suicide and suicidal ideation, what are the common and grave questions that young people want answers nowadays?
Aside from those, young people are also very anxious. So it is not just depression. So to the person who asked this, maybe you're a teacher, I don't know, parang galing to sa guro. Kasi nga young people or parent, yung isa would be yung anxiety. Bakit sila laging takot na takot? Bakit parang maliit lang yung bagay, napapaiyak na sila, hindi na nila kaya? So that's one topic that actually my students also, Mom, why am I always so scared? Sabi ko, I don't know. Why are you always so scared? Mom, I don't know. So yung ganun na. So we brainstorm ways on how to get them to relax. I actually sometimes have to start my class with deep breathing. Kasi nga very shallow, takot sila eh. If you're shallow, yung pahinga mo is very, very shallow. Alam mo, minsan nahihilo sila and then they faint. They're all of these things. Isa pa, for young people, especially for girls, I'll have to tell you. This is especially for girls. Uso ngayon yung panic attack. May maraming young people nagpa-panic attack. So isa pa yan na dapat natin ipansin. So aside from suicide and suicidal ideation, it is also anxiety and panic attacks. So those two. And for the person who asked this, you can actually Google, get my book maybe. The one with the best tips would be Lifeline. So that Lifeline book I told you about would have a chapter on depression, a chapter on anxiety, and it has tips on how to deal with them. Or you can just go to a very good website like the American Psychological Association, Philippine Pediatric. No, they don't have it yet. I gave the Philippine Pedia Society. They were a bit worried. So my last talk with them last month was on how to get kids not get addicted to gadgets. That was what the doctors wanted to know. So we were talking about the etiology of addiction. So yeah, but there's so many very good. You can go to WHO actually. WHO is very worried worldwide about gadget thing. So they're also worried about, I think, the WHO is linking anxiety and depression to gadgets. So I honestly think if the kids can get their gadget habits under control, there will be less depression and less anxiety. That one, yes. So that can be where you can help your child. That's a very good question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chua. And I guess we're going to have a last two questions because after this, we're going to have a breakout rooms. So the last question is, I am a grade 1 teacher. How can I politely tell the parents not to do the work of their kids?
I think you just have to tell them very politely. How do you tell them? Number one, it should not just be you. I think it should be the school. Hindi lang pwede ikaw. It should be buong ano. One is have a parent orientation. Okay? Let your principal and the coordinator and you do it. So the principal should say it, then they should come up with a memo. The coordinator should also repeat it, and every single time you repeat it also. Okay, I know that's a funny question, but I know. Suppose it's happening now and the principal cannot do it and the coordinator. One is, yes, you're right. You have to be very polite, but you should also be firm. You can say, na, mommy, daddy, alam ko mahal ninyo to. Pero alam mo, yung nag-aaral yung anak ninyo, di ba? Yan na. The student is your child. You are not the student. And if you do it, anong matutunan ng anak ninyo, di ba? It can also help if your school also tells the parents not to keep on focusing on grades. The teacher who asked this, alam din ninyo, ma'am, di ba? The reason yung mga parents umuupo sa tabi ng anak nila is kasi gusto nila mag-honors yung anak. Gusto nila tama yung sagot ng anak. So the whole thing is not just the sitting beside the parent. The whole thing is we are a culture obsessed with grades. So you have to find allies in your school. So your school should actually come out with learning and growth rather than grades. You will tell them, yes, we have to have grades, but we don't want you to cheat. And honestly, sitting beside their child and doing the work for them is actually cheating. It is cheating. Okay, so when DepEd says cheating is the number one problem, they are right. It's happening all the time. So maybe, pero do it very, very politely. Wala tayong magagawa, teacher, kung gusto pa rin umupo yung nanay. Maaawa lang tayo sa anak. Kasi kawawa yung anak kung ganun yung nanay, di ba? Wala nang good role model. Pero at least, teacher, you did your best. You talked to the parent. At least nagawa mo. You can, makakatulog ka sa gabi. Kasi nagawan mo, nasabi mo. Di ba yan naman eh. Yung sabi nga ni Pope, di ba? We need to be frank, not superficial, and not instant answers. Good.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chua. We have last question. Ito po yung last question, medyo I think this is very helpful for everybody. In addition, what are the barometers or indicators of severe mental stress, health of a child and person?
What are barometers?
What are the barometers or indicators of a severe mental stress, health of a child and a person or person?
Oh, that one would necessitate a 1 hour webinar. That's the first slide in my webinar. For the one who asked this, it might be good for you seriously to attend the webinar I told you, which is going to happen in November. Because I will give you all the warning signs. There are many warning signs. Inability to rise from the bed. We call it also minsan catatonia. Minsan a significant decrease in work output and activity. A feeling of hopelessness. Frustration tolerance is very low. Irritability is very high. Crying jags. Mood swings. Okay, so sometimes they're manic, sometimes they're very happy, sometimes they're very sad. And if you're not a mental health professional, you'll think, okay naman pala yung anak ko kasi last week parang malungkot siya, pero ngayon parang okay na siya. Alam mo, hindi yan. We call it manic depression. Manic depression means that it's the same thing. Your kid is cycling. In fact, minsan na mas natatakot ako during the manic phase. Yung akala natin that they're better, but they're not. Because that's when they will commit suicide. Really. In the depression phase, they're sometimes so depressed that they cannot even rise from the bed. So, wala. Pero kung manic, they would say, alam mo, tatalon lang ako. That's during the manic phase. That's the ano. So, there are at least 10 to 20 I can give. But this is the last question na, and if I go into it pa, yan na medyo ano. So, good question, but maybe for a different webinar altogether. Pero God bless to the person who asked this. God bless. Seriously, try to attend the one I'm going to do, and it will be very different from this talk. I will go straight into your question. What are the warning signs, the risk factors, and what to do?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chua. And I'd like to also personally thank you for reminding us as parents that first educators are parents. And family is the first and essential place of education. Napakaganda po yun.
Sabi ni Pope.
Okay, so thank you very much for reminding us. And with that, Dr. Chua, we would like to thank you for that wonderful and inspiring. And if you see, we have very good questions around here, but
excellent questions.
Yeah, with the time that we have, we are now going to proceed to the breakout rooms. So may I call Brother Mars to facilitate for the breakout rooms. Once again, thank you, Dr. Chua.
Thank you. Goodbye, Miss Basas. Goodbye, Albert. And goodbye, my former student. And goodbye to everybody. God bless us all. Bye-bye.
Bless. Brother Mars?
Just like this morning, we will be going to our breakout rooms. You don't need to do anything. Automatic po. Dadaling kayo doon. We will be there until 4:45. We will be going back here. Huwag niyong kakalimutan for our closing prayer and remarks. So here we go to our breakout sessions. Those of us who are left here are either part of the organizing team or have no permanent assignments. Rex, kindly transfer those who have rooms.
Yes, pa.
Yes. T2R extra would like to go back to room 2. Yes, you may. Your choice. So halos okay na lahat. Ito na lang si as usual. Ma'am Corazon, would you like to go to a group? I can transfer to a smaller group. Group 6. Okay, sir. Ay, kompleto lahat. Wala na. Si Acer na lang na hindi ko kilala si Acer. Everybody's okay. Very good. Ay, si Ramon. Happened to Ramon. Number 9. Hindi lang nag-confirm. Okay. Very good, team. Hallelujah.
Dr. Mars, nasa Facebook ka.
Ay, oo nga. Thank you.